That's the origin of global warming, ladies and gentlemen.
Peter, what are we seeing on this wall?
Well, you're seeing the history of much of the last 60 years in terms of technology and ideas that have had a huge impact in the world. Jay Forrester passed away last fall, and about 3 weeks ago we had a celebration here of his life. So this goes from the 30s, in his early, life, 40s. He was actually, if anybody could be called the inventor of the modern digital computer, Jay would be it. He led the team at MIT that built the first general purpose digital computer. That's the stuff you see over here. How IBM got involved. IBM was their contractor. That's how IBM got into computation, into digital computers.
It's not some science fantasy effect from 2001. This electronic display emanating from Australia's largest computer is a picture of the condition, past, present and future of planet Earth. The program was originally devised by a scientist working from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Jay Forrester. It was developed under the auspices of the Club of Rome by an MIT research team to present a complex model of the world and what we humans are doing to it. The program, called World One, doesn't pretend to be a precise forecast. What it does for the first time in man's history on the planet is to look at the world as one system. It shows that Earth cannot sustain present population and industrial growth for much more than a few decades. It shows that simply cleaning up our car exhausts and making some small effort to limit our families simply isn't enough. It's like an electronic guided tour of our global behavior since 1900 and where that behavior will lead us. Well, this is the printed version of what we've just seen on the television screen. What looks at first to be just a maze of computer characteristics is really a system of very simple graphs which project what's going to happen to the planet over the next 150 years if we don't do something drastic to stop it. Down the left-hand side of the graph is the date, 1900, 1940, 1980, 2020, right down to 2060. Now, each of these lines of letters represents a curve showing some aspect of the condition of the planet. The further out this way they go, the greater that figure is. The further this way, the less. For example, P represents population. So here it is at 1900. And then it comes up to 1940, it starts to take off. Here we are at 1980, up to the turn of the century, and then it starts to peter off. Let's now have a look at this next curve, the Q curve, which is the quality of life. And this is represented by, for example, the amount of space people have, the amount of money they have to spend, the amount of food they have to eat. Now, it increases rapidly up to 1940, but from 1940 on, the quality of life diminishes. And here we are about the turn of the century, and we come up to the year 2020, and it's really come right back. More people, of course, means that you start to chew up your supply of natural resources. And this is this curve here, the N curve. And it shows that slowly but steadily, the pool of natural wealth in the world, natural resources, minerals, oil, and so on, is slowly but steadily diminishing. So this is the situation. As population increases, the quality of life decreases and the supply of natural resources decreases. But have a look at this curve here. This is called the Z curve, and it represents pollution. Now, predictably enough, as the population increases up to 1980, pollution increases. There's more rubbish. But from 1980 to the year 2020, pollution really takes off. This is assuming, of course, that we don't do anything about it. So the year 2020, the condition of the planet starts to become highly critical. And if we don't do anything about it, this is what's going to happen. The quality of life is going to go right back to practically zero. Pollution is going to become so serious, right out here, that it will start to kill people. So the population will diminish. Right back here, less than it was in the year 1900. And at this stage, round about the year 2040, 2050, civilized life as we know it on this planet will cease to exist. Well, hopefully, of course, it won't be allowed to happen. But it's taken this kind of shock treatment to nudge governments into doing something.
So one of the kind of milestones captured in Kelvy's wall here is a book called World Dynamics, which led to another book, the popularized version, called The Limits to Growth. It was the first complete model of the global industrialization process, how economic growth interacts with all the environmental and social constraints. So today, virtually all the issues we talk about in the general heading of sustainability were foreshadowed.
Anybody here heard about Agenda 21? Well, some. You need to all know about it. It's a code phrase. It's the title of the program for collectivism, global collectivism, which was designed at the United Nations and is being implemented as we speak in every country of the world, at least where the UN has an interest in implementing it, in the more advanced nations. And it's being done under the guise of environmentalism. They're using the label of, let's be concerned about our planet Earth. Our planet Earth is being destroyed. We're losing our natural resources. Everything is going bad in the environment. We've got global warming. We've got all these things. We've got pollution. So therefore, what we need is more laws. Surprise. More laws, and especially at the international level, to regulate and control these things and take away the personal freedoms that you and I have over our own property, because we need to do it for the greater good of the greater number. We need to do it to save the world. And it's being coordinated at the United Nations.
No one, not even the longtime opponents of the environmental movement, believed such a transforming agenda was possible. However, it is being implemented quickly through innocent-sounding programs that most Americans support. Wilderness areas, critical habitat for endangered species, wetlands, roadless areas, national heritage areas, and other restrictive programs are sold to the public as necessary to protect nature, or as assurance that Americans will always have a place to escape from the heavily populated cities. More invented tools and programs, such as conservation easements, smart growth, open space, and greenlining, are being promoted as a way to control growth. What all these programs have in common is extinguishing the private property rights of American citizens and transferring the control of the property to elite land trusts or directly to the government. It will not take the 80 to 100 years they originally projected to complete their task. They are much closer to achieving their goal than anyone realizes. Environmentalists have scared Americans into thinking that if we continue to live as we are today, the Earth will self-destruct, species will die, and the globe will be covered with development. However, government data shows that only 6% of America's landmass is currently developed. Only 3% of America is classified as urban. Yet 77% of all Americans live in these urban areas. The rest is still largely untouched by humans. The problem is not that our nation is being overdeveloped. The problem is as old as time. It is about who will own the land. Large amounts of the nation's natural resources are still owned by private citizens. America's founders vehemently opposed the concept of government or elitists owning the land in America, which would result in the citizens being leaseholders and serfs. One of the most well-known property rights advocate of our time, Wayne Hage, said it best. Either you have the right to own property, or you are property. Make no mistake, this battle is not about whether the land will be used, resources extracted, and wealth created, but by whom. Karl Marx wrote in the Communist Manifesto, "The theory of the communist may be summed up in the single sentence, abolition of private property." America's founding father, John Adams, stated, "Property must be secured or liberty cannot exist." Which course will America take?
It has laid bare the fundamental lack of social cohesion, fairness, inclusion, and equality. In short, we need a great reset. We have a choice to remain passive, which would lead to the amplification of many of the trends we see today. Polarization, nationalism, racism, and ultimately increased social unrest and conflicts. But we have another choice. We can build a new social contract, particularly integrating the next generation. We can change our behavior to be in harmony with nature again. And we can make sure that the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution are best utilized to provide us with better lives. It is obvious that we are in the midst of the most severe crisis the world has experienced since World War II. 75 years ago, countries and people came together to shape the post-war global order, which brought us decades of peace, increased global cooperation, and prosperity to hundreds of millions of people around the world. Now is the historical moment, the time, not only to fight the severe virus, but to shape the system for the need for the post-corona era. We have to mobilize all constituents of our global society to work together. We must not miss this unique window of opportunity.